What started a few weeks ago with an unformed, shapeless prisoner in a nameless cell in a location we didn't really know much about has now led us into the slums of Port Deepwater, into an old abandoned tower in which Targa, our randomly generated protagonist, has recently fought and overcome a giant bat and had the bat for dinner. And in between we established a few things, such as that the orc homeland is the Iron States of Mirakan, that Port Deepwater is a hive of trade and larceny, to draw from, never mind, ruled by some merchant families that are constantly vying for the top dog position in the keep, whereas the currently non-ruling families do everything in their power to bring the ruling family down again. And we also became aware that the city is currently blockaded by sea, which leaves only a passage over land as a means of exit currently. Targa is still wanted by Karg, her relative or ruler, or we're not quite sure what their relationship is because we don't really need to know at this point. But Karg's emissary has found an untimely end when his litter found himself between a cavalry charge and an angry mob, which leaves Targa for the moment free and relatively unpursued. However, Ilanis, the mercenary formerly in the emissary's employ, has still got a scout out there tracking Targa and keeping tabs on her position. So sooner or later, she might end up confronted, provided that is, she survives the encounter with whoever this barbarian is that is about to emerge from a hidden trapdoor in the cellar of this abandoned tower in which they've been camping out or doing whatever it is that barbarians do when they come to the city. Whatever a barbarian is in this particular world context, that's what we have to find out. So let's get building. Hello friends, Anderson here. This is Knave, episode 5, I do believe, where we have recently dispatched a giant bat and are now about to confront a barbarian because the dice have said so. We know very little about barbarians in this world. In fact, we know pretty much nothing at all. So are we dealing with a classic sword and sorcery barbarian of the bare-chested leather sandal type, or are we subverting the stereotype somewhat here? This is perhaps something we should ask the Oracle before we even start envisioning this person. Barbaric, there is a good word. It would be barbaric to not like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment if you know the drill. Anyway, let's keep moving. Rolling a die 20 on our Lonely Knave closed questions oracle. So a no would be no, it's not a stereotypical sword and sorcery Robert E. Howard barbarian. It is something else. 9. No, but no, it's not a stereotypical Howard style hither came Conan kind of barbarian, but it's similar enough, I suppose. So it is, perhaps this is an indicator that our barbarian is non-human, but otherwise follows a similar general cultural principle of what a fantasy class barbarian is meant to represent. So the whole tribal honor battle kind of thing. So let's see if we can determine an ancestry for this particular barbarian and figure out how this might have come together. I do actually still have the origins table or ancestry table. I, as usual, try to avoid the word race for the rather unpleasant connotations. In any case, it lists a whole heap of easily transplantable fantasy folk. So let's roll a percentage dice and figure out what this barbarian is. 02, it's a human. Objection. 20, if we flip it, is also a human. So let's roll again, because this is clearly not what the oracles wanted to begin with. 96, that... Okay, that is the... I remember doing that. That is something that I never got to use when we built the city of Coleraine. That was something suggested to me by Steve Morrison of the Errant Adventures podcast, where Maze Rats has a kind of a monster generator built in, and Maze Rats also happens to be written by the author of Knave, so this is a nice synergy here, which means we can actually now create a kind of bespoke ancestry for this barbarian that only really exists in this hybridized form in this particular world. We also then need a name for these people, but maybe there's only one of them. Maybe it's the Highlander. We'll see. I just need to quickly go and grab Maze Rats, which I only have a printed out copy of. I don't have the... I haven't bought it yet. I will. Anyway, so here it is, and then we have the random tables here that will allow us to gain some insights into what we are building here. So basically taking a template from one of these monster bases and adding a bunch of characteristics from another table. I have a feeling this is going to be a fairly building heavy episode the way this is going. So let's determine the monster base. Is it aerial, terrestrial, or aquatic? 4, terrestrial. Okay, so how many results are in each of these columns? 12, and there's 3 columns. So we can finagle this in a way by using a d12 and then rolling a die 6 to determine which column we're in. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we have our base template for a terrestrial animal that this barbarian is based on. 2 and 6, so that's the first column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Boar. We have pig people. That is a... well, there's actually precedence for this, I guess, if you look at quill boars in World of Warcraft and things like that. Or the original orcs to begin with, actually. We can move on to the monster features. I mean, we're already inundating this poor person with derogatory terms. First we're calling them a barbarian, now we're calling them a monster. None of this is, of course, an indicator of their alignment or any of that or their initial reaction. It's just the terminology on a systematic basis. So let's envision a base humanoid boar person. We again have these 3 columns with 12 results, so we can go with the same principle. So let's give them a feature. Column 1, result 4 is claws. So our barbarian has claws. I think one more feature will do it to sharpen the focus a bit. Right now it's still fairly... well, as run-of-the-mill as a boar humanoid can get. 4 and a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's hooves. Okay, well, I would have kind of hoped for some curveball here. The dice are embracing the boar theme a little bit too much to my taste, but so I guess that means it's a fairly standardly shaped bipedal boar person, where now we can maybe get something different out of the monster traits. So let's give some monster traits to our barbarian. 4 and 2. Okay, that's decaying. Interesting. Again, all of a sudden drawing from World of Warcraft, Razor Fen Downs, the zombie quill boars. Interesting. Another trait maybe. Watch this come out stinking. Column 3 and a 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Skeleton. Wow, okay. I guess the decay has progressed somewhat. I'm starting to think, is this a feature of the people or is this a feature of the individual? I'm leaning towards individual. So this is an afflicted boar person have their face rotted off already, exposing bone and somehow being eaten up by a curse or an illness or some kind of plague that maybe they've come to the city to cure because they've been pushed out by their people, and maybe that's the hope that they can find somebody in these city folk places where they could procure a cure, and then finding out that city people aren't particularly welcoming to rotting pigs. Do we have any abilities? Naturally we do. We just want to figure out which one. Again, I think 2 of. Column 1, 8th result is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. Mind reading. Okay. How did that happen? Must be related to the curse, or is this something all boar people can do? This we should probably find out, because if that is something all the boar people can do, this is somewhat relevant to how they're perceived. So let's ask whether this is specific to this one character or to their entire ancestry. Is it something they can all do? 3. That's definitely a no, but is it a no and? No, it's just a no. Okay, so whatever afflicts this barbarian is filling their head with voices, with the thoughts of those around them, and that makes it very, very hard to endure being in a city, which means that this boar retreated down into the hole and tries now to find out how to continue on their quest to cure themselves. But this slum, this retreat down in the ground is where they've tried to drown out the voices, and now there's Targa walking in and with her thoughts, and yeah, especially after having just fought and this whole struggle that must have resonated in this poor pork mentalist. Let's have another ability, I think. That is the 11th ability in the second column, which is spell casting. Oh, this is okay. This is like some kind of barbarian, to be sure. Do we need a monster tactic? I don't think so. We could use a personality though. So let's roll personality here and see how this shakes out. The 11th result in the second column, paranoid. Okay, that I would be paranoid if I kept hearing everybody's thoughts and my tribe kicked me out, so probably. And then the 6th result in the first column is curious. Okay. Since this isn't in fact a monster, I don't think I want to add a monster weakness, because it's not really necessary, I find. I think we have a pretty decent picture of this boar barbarian, who then, in this combination of spellcasting and curiosity, is probably a shaman, and then maybe this affliction happened during a ritual gone wrong or something. This could work. And then the tribe kicked them out. Now, what we still need is a name, and we need kind of a naming theme for this. And also, I think, a name for the boar folk in general. Let me see if I have something lying around here. I think I'm gonna break out the Perilous Wilds again. I can't, unfortunately, locate my English language copy, so I'm just gonna take the German one. The names are the same. I think we have 4 different themes here that we can use. So I'm gonna roll a die 4 to determine the theme first. 3, that is the kind of the Finnish language theme. So that is what we're rolling our percentage roll on. And we add a die 6 to determine male or female. 12 and a 3 is Arsi, and that is male. And what do these people call themselves? Are we gonna take the location column maybe, or the mount column? Why not determine it with a die 6 again? So 1 to 3 is the first, 4 to 6 the second column. 5 is the second column, 75 is Upea. So we are dealing with Arsi of the Upea people. So let's finally meet Arsi of the Upea people, shall we? So we might just do a reaction roll, because this could go any of the possible ways. We can justify pretty much any reaction, so let's determine one by rolling 2 die 6. That's a 6, so Arsi is unsure what to make of this. And thus, as Targa descends once more from her new hiding place that she has just established, she has created for herself a little hideout in the upper level and fashioned a sort of improvised ascent through a rope that she can pull up once she's up there. She's not aware that there is a trapdoor that leads into a lower level, because Arsi has hidden it quite well. And so as Torga's feet touch the ground and she is preoccupied with the act of climbing down, she doesn't really notice that this additional presence has inserted itself into the downstairs of this abandoned tower, climbing up and over the rubble. Or does she? We could roll a wisdom check with disadvantage, and if she really surprises us, she notices despite being preoccupied with a descent and feeling relatively safe in here. She does not. So Arsi manages to surprise her. We have 6 different weapon types available, so let's see what weapon Arsi carries. That is a spear, sword, mace, or axe, etc. I think a spear seems appropriate, so Targa, planting her feet on the ground, suddenly has a spear tip pressed into her back. We assume she's wearing her brigandine and had the axe somehow wedged somewhere when she descended, so it's not an easy grasp. She can kind of flip it around and ready it, but it's not a situation where she's very confident that she can get the drop on the attacker by just swinging around and taking the head off, so she will not immediately retaliate. And since Arsi is unsure about all of this and has probably heard the commotion earlier, the fight, which is a few hours ago from what we've established last time, because it took Targa a few hours to set everything up. Meanwhile, Arsi was probably sitting down and rocking back and forth in this little hidey hole in the cellar that we assume he's created for himself, waiting for this wave of aggression and intrusive thoughts from upstairs to die down, and now has hearing this noise of somebody getting back into motion again and coming down from the upper level, has come up and wants to know what's going on. Maybe also doesn't want to necessarily be seen because of the way that he looks, picturing Arsi wearing like a moth-eaten cowl over the half skeletal face, and just generally very bulky and dressed in rags and wrappings around the hands and everything, so not an easily identifiable figure, but nonetheless doesn't really want to be seen. So remains with the spear poking at Torga's back, and the first command will be,
"Don't turn around."
And since he's curious,
"What are you doing here?"
all the while Targa is weighing her options, kind of feeling out where the spear tip is and in which direction she could pivot. And maybe this is already where she notices something is up, because as soon as she considers putting her weight in a certain stance to maybe be able to pivot forward and have the spear glance off, the spear tip immediately wanders and pokes in a different direction, because of course Arsi is reading her mind. So not seeing really any options to engage with this hostile or potentially hostile spear bearer, she feels obliged to answer.
Needed a roof over my head. Didn't know the bat had company.
I think RC here is unsure, mainly because this is as much an unwelcome intrusion as it is an opportunity, since RC is kind of unable to navigate the city easily, at least as soon as he gets closer to crowded places. His head just feels like exploding. So if he wants to make any headway in his own investigation here, maybe he needs an ally, and maybe Targa can be that ally, he thinks. So perhaps he's willing to offer kind of an arrangement of cohabitation based on a condition. I think maybe this is where we can determine kind of a quest to extrapolate from this. Maybe RC already has done some homework but is unable to execute himself or by himself and needs an ally. So I have the book of random tables for quests here as well. And since we also have the campaign notebook here, which allows us to like on the fly generate dungeon rooms, maybe I want to skew this in the direction of a dungeon quest. So there is a location that RC wants to seek out, or wants someone to seek out, that is somehow related to his affliction, but now we still need to figure out what the dungeon hook is. So we have dungeon hook ideas here, which also go on a percentage format, so D100. And of course, we'll have to like permutate this a bit and fit it to RC specific situation. But at least it's the seed for a kind of a little dungeon crawl we could do, since that I feel like is a pretty nice thing to do now at the juncture we're at. So let's give ourselves a dungeon hook here. 23. A thunderstorm blew over an ancient oak tree, revealing a tunnel beneath it. It appears to be a ruin of some kind. That is not fitting in this. Well, actually, if we subtract the oak tree, it kind of fits, because we are in a ruin of some kind. So what if, what if, oh, that could work. What if RC isn't here in this specific ruin just by pure happenstance, but because this specific ruin is an entry point to an old structure that, since this is also the old town, the former town center, and this used to be the main part of the city before the new harbor was made and everything moved towards the new market. What if he's downstairs there because he's been digging and he knows that there is an access point into like a tunnel system that runs under the old town, and in there is something he's looking for. He's not willing to share that yet, so we don't need to know. All we need to know is that he needs help digging, and he's willing to share the tower if Targa helps him dig.
Oh, we can share work. You can have the upstairs and I will have the cellar, but there's a bit cramped down there. So, if I were to let you stay, would you swear to help me free my hideout down there from all the rubble?
And Targa is thinking, well, I don't want to show my face too much. I'm still being wanted here because the city has put out a bounty on her after all, because the city knows that Karg will pay handsomely, and now news will get out that the emissary is dead and she's escaped, so she'll be looked for. So she doesn't want to immediately head out on the streets. She also needs a friend of her own. So I think she's on board with this. And since RC has already revealed a little bit of knowledge about orcs, since he has asked her to swear on it, and therefore kind of lock her into a more binding arrangement, she will simply...
Don't see why not. You have my word.
And with that, the spear tip disappears, and she hears a little scuttling behind her as RC takes a few steps back into the shadow and kind of cowers under his cowl. Targa turns around and looks him up and down, and since orcs do see quite well in the dark, gets a glimpse of the decaying face and this pig snout and everything. And we have to remember her character traits here. Well, don't you have a face only a mother could love? Let me just roll the charisma check to see how well received this is. Yeah, see, this is how she gets away with this. So she is very forthright, and of course RC knows this to be true, and he simply scoffs at it and leans on the spear.
Well, that certainly is enough pleasantries for the moment. Let's get to work.
And he descends into that trapdoor expecting Targa to follow, which he does, finding a really half-collapsed hidey hole down there with bare necessities for RC's stay. And he hasn't been here long. He's just started making some progress and moving effectively like some of the rubble to the space below the trapdoor and then lifting it up and throwing it out. And that's what he starts doing now. He starts throwing up the stones that he's shaken loose and dug out in the past day and throwing them on the pile above. And Targa assists. Let's just make another perception check for Targa, for her to see if she can figure out that he's really not just trying to enlarge the space here, but digging in a specific direction. Nope, totally oblivious. That's an 11. Plus 1 is 12. But hey, at least she has a friend now, and they're digging, and we can maybe assume that before long they dig through somewhere and they find an opening into a tunnel system which we can explore next time. So thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you then, and bye for now.